Briefing on the current security by...
It's your boy Young Love, I give him that thing. Punch your leg stand and punch it America. Banyi doll, ban punch your leg stand and punch it America. Banyi doll, ban walk on your leg. Kankaro watana watching. Oga leg juir kwa oga leg. Panda with ya punch it America. Banyi doll bano chingitongo pandon kujuira baya cheka. Paku panda juir wabia Panchir America, Banji
particularly by youth, through community policing, accelerated learning programs, vocational training, and dimension levels of the national police, the state police, to secure peace at the state and the nation at large. She also mentioned the benchmarks that are needed so as our country be lifted out of the armed embargo. And one of the conditions were unification of forces, elimination of child soldiers, reduction in gender-based violence, disarmament of civilians. She also cited challenges of the states in areas of logistics, in areas of resources, and also the abandonment of cantonment site by soldiers due to lack of some basic facilities. Honorable Mahmoud Solomon, the Minister of Interior, said he's still a new minister and it's only 3 days. But he said the situation in the country is stable. Juba is generally calm. The issue of disarmament of civilians by the police is tough because the civilians are more armed than the police. He agreed to share more of his activities when he is well briefed and when he resumes, and he hopes he will do that before the end of this gathering. Honorable Elizabeth Achwe, the Minister of Health, spoke about better health as a precondition for development and an outcome of good governance. She cited less funding to the health sector, which is a major challenge, and this leads to inadequate health care personnel, inadequate health care facilities, and high maternal and child mortality, high prevalence of diseases. She suggested solutions of increasing the health budget that will improve the activities of her ministry. In regards to state presentations, we started with the presentation from the Unity State, which was presented by the Deputy Governor. He mentioned challenges in the state, in particular challenges of floods, challenges of limited road networks, and he also talked of revenge killings which are existing, cattle rustling, and deaths of livestock due to waterborne diseases. And he cited that the delay in the unification of forces is one of the problems that affects the security of his area. He also mentioned achievements that there are no violations of the peace agreement, and repatriations for IDPs. Some were lifted from Juba, the state, and there's freedom of movement. The governor of Jonglei State, Honorable Dinyal Chagor, cited the bigness of the state and the population and said the ceasefire is still holding in the state. He also mentioned that in Jonglei, they work as sons and daughters of Jonglei. They don't have differences of parties. He also talked about the state infrastructure which has been destroyed by war and now the floods. There are no roads, but he appreciated the Juba Bor Road, which is a good sign. He said in the state they are struggling with intercommunal violence, and in fact wanted support from the national government. He also mentioned the issue of disarmament, that if you disarm one group, you don't disarm another group, it becomes a problem. His Excellency, the first Vice President of the Republic, all protocols who have come, I'm humbled to say this is the end of our recap. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, according to our agenda, we should be discussing, which we started yesterday. And as I told you yesterday, the ministers who presented would be present in case the governors and the teams want to ask a clarification, or in case the ministers have points that have been omitted, which they thought should be put in our recap. So, Dr. Julia, let's give that half an hour which we lost. We will compensate it by not you going to break. If you want tea, then you have to order the tea. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I think you make my work easy. So we will have a working tea. If you want tea, you get up and you can come back. And the floor is open on some of these recaps. Some of the things which we should have been put under the tools of the nation buildings, which are the presentation of the VPs yesterday. They talk about investing on people, which is social services to the people. Mama Jadin talk about social justice and social change, the importance of youth, women, and people with a disability empowerment. Dr. Waniga talk about mobilization of resources, natural resources, and well management of those resources. And then the first Vice President talk about the self federal system. So taking responsibility to the states. I think that's the message. So we open the floor for all of us. Any more?
Your Excellency, the First Vice President, all the protocol observed. I want to comment on the presentation by Honorable Angelina Tang, the Minister of Defense. In her presentation, she said that there are two types of police in our country: the national police and the state police. But according to what is in the state, there is one police, national police. It would have been better if the Constitution was here with us. Your Excellency, the first Vice President, what was in the interim Constitution when South Sudan was still part of Sudan? In fact, there were two levels of police: national police and state police. But after South Sudan became independent in 2011, and the interim constitution was revised, the status of the police became the same as the status of the army, and the same with the other organized forces. The police became a national institution like the army. The wildlife became a national institution like the army. A fire brigade became a national institution like the army. And the prison, the correction services also became a national institution like the army. And in fact, there is a very big problem with this type of status of other organized forces. They feel more allegiance to the general headquarters, to the center, than to us in the state. And this is one of the issues that we need to address in the permanent constitution of the country. Yes, the army can be a national institution because it is defending the whole country. But with respect to the national police and the other organized forces, we should go back to what was during the interim period, when South Sudan was still under Sudan. Two types of police: national police and the state police. Thank you very much.
Is you want that we answer straight, maybe, so that nobody repeats that question. Yes, Madam Engineer. Yeah, you can come upstairs if you want. That's why I wanted this one to be carried down.
Thank you very much. What I'm holding is the Constitution, our transitional Constitution, as amended, not the new amendment that has not yet been passed by the Parliament. I'm in page 128, Schedule B, Powers of States. In Powers of State, you go to sub-article 2. Sub-article 2 says, it says the exclusive executive and legislative power of state shall be as follows. Number 2 says state police, prison, wildlife, fire brigade services. So all of those are actually state competence as per our Constitution. If this is not implemented, then it's us ignoring the Constitution. And this is supposed to be in the state constitution, because the state constitutions are supposed to be in compliance with this Constitution. In our police law, the previous one that is now amended, still states that there is a state police. So if you at the state level decided to forsake your power and left it to the national level, that's for you to answer. But it is clear in the Constitution. Thank you. And I want to add something to the recap this morning, and I think it's a very important point. This is to do with the intercommunal violence. I actually stated that the intercommunal violence is one amongst the top national security threat to the country. I want that stated in the recap. Thank you.
Okay. Any other query at the back end there with the blue shirt? Yes, the blue is your shirt, not blue. I think it's blue. Okay. Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you, His Excellency, Vice President, first Vice President of the Republic of South Sudan. I have a very important issue I would like to hear regarding road in Western Equatorial State. Yesterday, General Kaban talked of most of the road constructed from the other party. So Western Equatoria, we did not hear anything about Western Equatoria. And the people who are living along that road, these are the farmers. They have a lot of plenty of food, need to be transported to Juba and elsewhere. So it would be very nice for people in Western Equatoria to know more about the road construction from there to Juba. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm Honorable Kenny Henry, a Deputy Chairperson, SLH Commission, Western Equatorial State.
Thank you, Your Excellency, the First Vice President, and all protocol observed. I'm called Wani Tom Sebit Michael, State Minister of Finance, Planning and Investment, Central Equatoria State. My question is related to the network of roads, which is a supplement to the previous question, which was also answered or questioned. Based on the road network that was explained to us by the Vice President for Infrastructure, it was a good gesture that most of our roads have been put in plan. Particularly, I did not hear about the prominent road that connects us to the two countries, Uganda and Congo. And this is basically the road that connects Juba, Yei, Kaya, Lasso. It is a state government. When we came in, through the able leadership of our governor, directed us to come up with a budget, identifying some of the projects which are urgent, which are immediate. And particularly, Yei Road was cut off because of the rain. And all of us, if we're aware of the liberation, I think with the importance of this road, we would have put it as a priority as a nation. And we as a state, we had to struggle to at least fill some of the potholes that disconnect us completely. We had wanted at least to lobby and we tried here and there. And we got an information which was very clear to us as a government, that the road is going to be taken by investors. And these investors are the Saudi Arabians. This has come very, very clear to the state as an information. And today or yesterday, we couldn't hear it from the Vice President. What happened? Is it that the Saudis could not do the road, oh, it has been deviated. This should be made very clear to us. Because when we talk about economic development, the road network is one of the important that we don't take it in another manner, but we take it based on the history of this country and based on the importance of this road that we could really put it as a priority. Number two, about the issue of the police, I think the government of Central Equatorial State, we have already received the ceiling of the budget that has been descended to us in the state. And I introduced it to the Council of Ministers, the ceiling, and in the budget reflected in the state budget. By then it was reflected, but it could not come to the state Minister of Finance, but goes directly to the police. But this time completely it's not there. And when we talk about the state police, here I think it is right from the national government that the police is not part of the state. So this is what we need to put it very clear, because you cannot talk about the state budget when there's no, the state police when there's no budget. So these are some of the queries that I've raised in this. Thank you so much.
Yes. Must be Minister of Local Government.
Thank you so much, the first Vice Presidents of the Republic of South Sudan, and at the same time, which is the chair of these forums, His Excellency Dr. Riek Machar. I am Honorable Patrick Oting Cyprians, the Minister of Information and Communications, Eastern Equatorial State. I have three things that I wanted to mention. Number one was on the remarks of the Vice Presidents, Mama Rebecca Yandeng, when the recap was read to us. I've seen the figures that she has mentioned concerning the donations that were given by the partners are not indicated there. So please jot that. Two, about the remarks from the first Vice President. What I've seen here, two things are mentioned, which is the bill number 8 and the bill number 9. But if I recall very well yesterday, you talk of also the bill number 6 that's supposed to be given to the governors, but it's not indicated, the recaps. And secondly, also number 7, which is supposed to be the creations of the 3 administrative areas, also not mentioned on the recap. The third, I don't know how the repertoires were, maybe they have the technical words, because if I recall it very well, when you declared this forum, you used the word officially open. But the repertoire or the recap actually mentioned normally open. So those are the two words that I'm trying to say. Instead of officially open, they use the word normally open. So I look normally open is a bit lighter than to use the word officially open. Thank you.
Yes. Behini, can you help? Yeah. At the back. Yeah. Yahud.
His Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of South Sudan, and the rest of the protocol is observed. Honorable Elia Richard Box, the State Minister of Local Government and Law Enforcement, Western Equatorial State. His Excellency, I have just three points or three concerns to raise. In addition to what my colleagues have raised yesterday, addressed to Ministry of Interior. Minister of Interior, one, the role of the Ministry of Interior when there is a communal conflict in the state. What is the intervention of Ministry of Interior at that end? What I mean to say here is we are expected to see that when there is a communal conflict in the state, the ministers will visit that particular area or the county concerned. As we have been having this communal conflict in Itambura, I have not realized the intervention of a Minister of Interior. An example, we were happy when there was an incident in Iba County based on deworming drugs. Yeah. The intervention of His Excellency, the Vice President, Hussein Abdelbagi, it will restore hope and confidence from the citizen and especially the parents whose peoples were affected. Number two concern addressed again to Ministry of Interior. We are talking here about the police. I would like also to know how the national government distribute equipment, example, like uniforms to our organized forces. Because when you come to the national level here, you see our organized forces look nicely in a uniform. But when you go to the state, it seems as our organized forces has been abandoned, neglected. So also, I don't know whether the issue of uniform, we have, how do you say, the embargo on it, as we have armed embargo in the Republic of South Sudan, whereby our soldiers or the organized forces cannot get access to uniforms so that they feel also as a police, not only police, all the organized forces, prison, wildlife, and so on. My last question and concern is addressed to His Excellency First Vice President. In the state, we have a Ministry of Local Government. I've been doubting, I don't know why, we don't have a Ministry of Local Government in national level, whereby we can have also a minister at the national level. And instead, we have only a chairperson of local government board. These were the three concerns I said it's better also to raise in this important forum. Thank you.
I think the best to do, if there are any omissions contained in the recap, and you want those omissions to be included in the draft of the recap, please write them down. We'll give them to the Secretariat. This is in saving time. Because now it is 10 o'clock, we should go to the next presentation. Now, some of the questions that have been raised, let me handle some of them. Roads. What the Vice President, General Taban, said were 3 national roads labeled as N1, N2, N3. There may come an N4, N5, or N6. There is also another labeling, A1, A2, A3, blah, 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 to A350 or any number. But since roads are a serious matter, we will find out where the Minister of Roads can come and have us briefed on national roads that are within his ministry, and the air roads will have time for that, since there are many questions about that. I know the Juba road, there is already a contractor. There are difficulties in the funding, but people are working on it. He will come and clarify more. Even if the Vice President was here, is the mistake you people make. He only shares the cluster. He is not minister. He does not account on behalf of the minister. The minister accounts for his ministry. You know, even in the recap, they still say Vice President for this, Vice President for this. That is wrong. The ministers are responsible for their ministries before the president and before parliament. But for sake of work, they're divided into clusters where a vice president will share a cluster. He doesn't have to know all the details. Okay? So he mentioned that maybe because the Minister of Roads was not in the program. We'll put him in the program. Yes, donations should be secretariat. I don't know how many of you are in the secretariat. Normally in a conference like this, you would be more than 3. If one person omits a statement, the other one will capture it. And then when you are recapping or writing your recap, you consult with yourselves. How many of you are there? 3, 7 of you. So there should be no omissions. Share your notes, because people are fast in talking. Writing and talking don't go at the same speed. Talking is faster than writing. So you share your notes. Act number 6. This is incorporation of the agreement into the transitional constitution. The way it is put in the recap is also wrong. You know, it's also wrong. Not as per that. They are separate legal documents. So Act number 7 is also different. Bills 8 and 9 are constitutional amendment bills that will be discussed by Parliament. So they're also different in that. Well, some of you speak as if we have not come, as if we were running a normal government. There was war in this country. So, and I said it that yesterday, in an abnormal situation, you don't expect that you will have equal distribution of everything. The capital would have better uniforms than the states, you know. So, but it is good to mention it. To say, look, now that we are at post-conflict, if the organized forces in the capital get uniforms, boots, all this must also go to the states. And I want to come back. Please read all these powers. This is where you produce legislation, laws, based on these ones. If you have not instituted state police, state prison, state wildlife, up to the end, you can blame the war for it. But since we are just like starting anew, this is what you should know. It has been in the Constitution. I know many of us, our generation, came from centralist unitary state. Okay? Despite the fact that South Sudan has been pushing the two Sudans to go federal. But the training that all of us had in our schools and in our political practice is even from the police themselves, that they do not like decentralization because they come from what background? Unitary police. So, but you have a state assembly that should make laws for you to establish the institutions that are basically in the transitional constitution, 10 years of it, you know. But because of war, this has not happened. Now the war is over, we're in post-conflict transition, we should start doing that. And start thinking from decentralization to a federal system. Why there is no local government ministry in the national government? Why do you want to have a local, by that state ministry? Even the Ministry of Federal Affairs is a ministry in a transition. Once we have settled, you don't need affairs will be the Governor General. So let us change our concepts. In the state, there is Ministry of Local Government. Once the local government is well established, it won't happen. Because in a federal system, they call it parallel systems. Now all governors fall under the president. They don't fall under the ministries. They fall under the president. Similarly, commissioners, when we have established a federal system, the commissioners will fall under the governor. There will be no minister of local government. But these ministries are established to help the establishment or the move to federalism. In the United States or in Nigeria, you won't find those ministries. Okay. So, but the coordination aspects are there. I want to address myself also to the Secretariat and the Department of Decentralization. It would be good for this forum to have all the previous resolutions of the Governors Forum, rather than printing the yellow book which was withdrawn yesterday. If you had printed the resolutions of the 8 Governors Forum before independence, and in a booklet, and we distribute them, we will benefit. And the 4 Governors Forum after independence. Because for sure, and when you are in your state, you can produce them all, or if the Ministry of Presidential Affairs can produce them, it would be good. So the Secretariat or the department should provide us with the resolutions of first 8 pre-independence Governors Forum resolutions and the 4 of the previous ones of the Independence Governors Forum. They will help us because what is mentioned in those resolutions, we don't need to mention it again here. We will know this was discussed before, this was agreed before. All we want to do is to implement it. Now, having stated this, ministers, is there anything you people want to, those who presented yesterday, to say? If nothing, then I can release them, and the new group who will present will come forward, and we move forward. Thank you. Also, the sitting can change. I don't think the Vice President will come. If any of them comes, they will join me here. So the ministers can come forward. Let's fill this gap. Now, let's move to the program of 10 o'clock.
Okay.
I hope Dr. Charles Gitwai is around.
Yeah, we will call him. If he's around, then
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much. Dr. Kitao is around. So please take the podium.
Yeah, Sir, was around with them. Jamadi Maja, Imam Vice President. Let me punish
Gabriel Sedar, please. Come to. Okay, you are good to go.
Your Excellency, Dr. Riek Machar Tene, First Vice President of the Republic, the Administrative Areas, His Excellency, Dr. Ismail Wise, Eager Special Envoy for South Sudan, Excellencies, Ambassadors, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning, Assalamu alaikum. I have the honor to address this high-level governance forum as the interim chairperson of the RJMEC this morning, and I am aware of many presentations that have already been made and others forthcoming, touching on the implementation of the Revitalized Agreement on the mandate of RJ, highlighting our assessment on the status of implementation of the Revitalized Agreement. I believe that this forum provides a good platform for us all to collectively interrogate some of the perennial challenges facing the implementation of the RACRIS and forge a fire for the peace agreement to date, which we must all acknowledge and build upon. Over the last 3 years since the RACRIS was signed, some peace dividends have been realized across the country, but much more remains to be done. Within the current timelines of RACRIS, we have barely 15 months until the end of the transition period, and yet some very critical tasks remain outstanding. I therefore want to invite this forum to take keen interest on why progress has been painfully slow and propose remedial measures. I'll therefore provide a chapter-by-chapter evaluation of the progress or lack of it, highlight key challenges, and conclude with recommendations of the article. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, under the governance chapter of the RACRIS, the following milestones are worth highlighting. The RACRIS was incorporated into the transition constitution of the Republic of South Sudan 2011 as amended. What followed was the reverting of the number of states from 32 to 10. Next was the establishment of the acting new executive at both national and state levels, starting from the presidency, the council of ministers, governors, deputy governors, state ministers,
chief administrators, and administrative areas. Furthermore, the Transitional National Legislative Assembly and the Council of States were reconstituted, and they held their joint inaugural sitting on 30th of August 2021. Recently, both houses passed the Code of Business for Parliamentarians and the Presidential Policy Statement. Accordingly, 8 of state legislative assemblies have recently been reconstituted. Only 2 state assemblies to be reconstituted for Western Madagascar and United States. Also remarkable was the appointment of the first female speaker of the RTNLA and a deputy speaker of the Council of States, both nominated by the ITIGN. Notwithstanding the milestones in governance highlighted above, there are key outstanding tasks to be accomplished. They include completion of the reconstitution of the remaining state legislative assemblies, lower local governments, and reconstitution of relevant institutions and mechanisms at the national level, the formation of the specialized technical committees of the Transitional National Legislature, enactment of all the bills approved, the Council of Ministers, enactment of all the bills approved by the Council of Ministers, and the establishment of the Ad hoc Judicial Reforms Committee, JRC, mandated to study and make recommendations to the RTGNU for consideration for judicial reforms. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, regarding Chapter 2 on the transitional executive arrangements, there has been some little progress registered in the following areas. Hostile actions have ceased, and permanent ceasefire is holding between the parties to the agreement. Some components of the 83,000 necessary immigrant forces were trained and now await graduation and redeployment. Last month, the presidency directed that the plans and operations for graduation and deployment of the United Forces be completed within 4 weeks. This coming from the presidency is a confirmation of the commitment by high-level leadership in implementing this critical transitional security arrangement chapter. We have high expectations, and we now await the Joint Defense Board to screen, select, and organize the trainees into unified formations in preparation for graduation and deployment. Trainees who left the training centers have been ordered to return. It is therefore crucial that necessary logistic support is provided and appropriate plans are put in place to make this happen. Lastly, System VM have continued to monitor and verify compliance by the parties to the permanent ceasefire. Despite the effort highlighted above, key and resolved critical transitional security arrangements tasks include the completion of the unification of the forces, agreements on a unified command structure. The fundamental requirement is the management and funding of the DDR Commission, a critical requirement to deal with the excess ranks and file and those ineligible to join the unified forces. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, under the Humanitarian Affairs Chapter 3 of the agreement, at least 700,000 people are estimated by United Nations Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs to have been affected by the floods in 27 countries across 8 states since May 2021, with Jonglei, Unity, Northern Madagascar, and Upper Nile states being the worst affected states. Over 2/3 of the flood-affected counties are confronted with high levels of food insecurity, poor access to basic services, and continue to face the threats of water and waterborne diseases. These are natural challenges that were not envisaged by the agreement. However, with respect to the implementation of the humanitarian chapter of the agreement, some progress has been registered. They include the following. First, the crucial humanitarian corridors have been opened. Second, South Sudan Action Plan on Return, Integration and Recovery 2020-2023 has been completed. Third, the National Framework for Return, Reintegration, Relocation of Displaced Persons, Achieving Durable Solutions South Sudan were reaffirmed in Geneva in 2021. Fourth, some IDPs and refugees have gradually returned to the country voluntarily. Lastly, access impediments have generally reduced, notwithstanding some pockets of insecurity associated with summer NAS activities, intercommunal and subnational violence or criminality, which threatens to reverse some of the gains already made. It is, however, important that while these natural disasters are beyond our control, as leaders, we are obligated to ensure that we are not part of the problem, but part of the solution. Despite the above progress, the critical pending tasks include, among others, the completion of the review and amendment of the NGO Act 2016, establishment of the Special Reconstruction Fund and Board to support the implementation of the agreement, which could open the convening of the South Sudan Donor Pledging Conference and guarantee the safety of humanitarian workers to enable the unaffected delivery of much-needed humanitarian services, including addressing the lying cause of youth protests against the workers. Of the 174 humanitarian access incidents reported by UNOCHA in the third quarter of this year, for instance, 97 were violence and threats against humanitarian personnel and assets. On resource, economic, and financial management, chapter 4 of the agreement, some progress has been made, registered improving the transparency in the management of public finance, which has been acknowledged by even the International Monetary Fund. Reforms are being taken in revenue collection, budgeting, allocation, and expenditure as required by the Act. Furthermore, there are ongoing efforts to rationalize and streamline the oil sector as stipulated in Article 4.8 of the Act on accountability and transparency, human resource management, and the management of oil revenues under Article 4.9 on the issues related to environmental impact. These are welcome developments. There are, however, some critical outstanding tasks which need to be addressed going forward. Among them are the following: the operationalization of key institutions such as the National Audit Chamber and the Anti-Corruption Commission, enactment of the draft bills by the RTNLA, including drafting legislation to establish the Economic and Financial Management Authority and its supervisory board to ensure effectiveness in discharging its duties. Review and transformation of the National Oil Company, the now Veteran Corporation, approval of the national budget. With regards to transitional justice under Chapter 5, the Council of Ministers approved a roadmap for the implementation of Chapter 5 and assigned the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs as the lead ministry for its implementation. Consequently, a ministerial task force was established to coordinate implementation of Chapter 5. Also, a technical committee was established to conduct nationwide consultations to inform the legislation establishing the Commission for Truth, Reconciliation and Healing, CTRH. The technical committee has developed a 6-month work plan and a budget, which is yet to be funded to commence nationwide public consultations. The key outstanding critical issues under transitional justice include the establishment of all the 3 transitional justice mechanisms, including the hybrid code for South Sudan and the compensation reparation authority to promote national reconciliation, healing, and accountability. I understand that the African Union Commission and the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs are discussing modalities of establishing the hybrid code. There are also needs for dedicated funding for Chapter 5 mechanisms. For instance, despite the establishment of the Technical Committee for the Commission of Truth, Reconciliation and Healing, it is yet to be commenced nationwide public consultations. The
committee urgently needs financial and technical resources from the Arctic Union and international partners to do its work. There is therefore an urgent need for the Arctic Union and peace partners to provide full support to the critical transition justice process. With regard to the permanent constitution-making process under Chapter 6 of the agreement, RJMEC successfully convened the workshop for the parties who agreed on the details for conducting the process as mandated under Article 6.7 of the Aracris, and handed over the workshop outcome document to the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs to inform drafting of legislation to govern the constitution-making process. The Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs has since drafted the required constitution-making process bill 2021, which has been endorsed by the Council of Ministers. Once enacted, the Act will pave the way for the constitution of the National Constitutional Review Commission and the establishing of the Constitution Drafting Committee. These institutions are critical to kickstart the national and people-centered constitution-making process for South Sudan. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, despite the process in some of these thematic areas, challenges persist. Too much time has been lost. The pace of implementation is unconscionably slow, and time is running out. I would therefore like to recommend that the Arctic Union undertakes the following: fast-track ratification of all the approved bills, including the Permanent Constitution-Making Process Bill 2021, and make them the Christmas gift to the South Sudan people. Finalize their nominations and the establishment of the ad hoc Judicial Reforms Committee. Make financial resources available for the completion of the transitional security arrangements, including graduation and deployment of unified forces, as well as DDR programs. Urgently resolve the outstanding issues of the ratio of the unified forces and unified command structure of the necessary unified forces. Expedite the establishment of the Board of the Special Reconstruction Fund in cooperation with the partners. Expedite all the reforms required in Chapter 4, including the National Audit Chamber and the Anti-Corruption Commission, and fast-track implementation of Chapter 5 and 6 of the peace agreement. Lastly, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to reiterate that RJMEC remains neutral, impartial, and focused on its mandate. The Revitalized Peace Agreement is an important covenant signed by all the parties on behalf of the people of South Sudan. We are behind the agreed timelines. And the implementation of the Aracris is lagging far behind the agreed schedule. Both the national and state level governments have responsibility to implement the Revitalized Peace Agreement in letter and spirit. This is the promise that the people of South Sudan expect from us. This is the price of leadership. This is the bloodless sacrifice we can make and save this promising young nation. People of South Sudan are looking upon us as leaders to bring them peace after years of bloodshed and also of lives by martyrs who have paid a supreme sacrifice for this nation. The world is watching, and we have a responsibility over the people we lead and prove that South Sudan leads to a motto of justice, liberty, and prosperity. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Since it is going to be a panel discussion, please have a seat here.
Thank you very much.
So that we need.
Thank you very much. Are we going to open the discussion?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Discussion.
Yeah. A few things that I just picked up. I will not pick up everything. I think the reporters are picking it up. The implementation of the peace agreement. Time is running out on us. Focusing on Chapter 4 need to be implemented. Commitment to peace, all of us, all the parties to signatory to agreement. For the peace is not for us, but for our people. Thank you very much, Doctor. The floor is yours.
Panelists,
Panelists.
who starts? Yusurin, Makoi.
Yes.
You better come up here.
Yeah, Minister of Information.
Your Excellency, the First Vice President, my colleagues, the ministers, the governors, participants, good morning. Well, I'm here as a panelist to react to some of the comments which have been made by my chair. I say by my chair because I'm a member of the argument. And whatever is happening, whatever decisions or resolutions that are made by the argument, we are part and parcel of it. So my chair has really narrated all that is needed. He has informed us about the progress in the implementation of the agreement. And so in the area of governance, in Chapter 1, I believe that all of you have quite satisfied that the agreement is in process, especially in Chapter 1, where we have established the executives at all levels, and we have established the legislatures at all levels, except those ones which are not yet out. And some of these legislatures, especially in the states, delayed because of the non-submission of the list in time. Up to now, some of the legislatures are not yet established, simply because there are still outstanding issues that need to be addressed. Not that only, but even the states that in which the legislatures have been announced are incomplete. They are incomplete because the parties to the agreement, or one of the parties to the agreement, has not yet reached a compromise and managed to resolve the outstanding problem. And as such, the list is incomplete because the members of that party, which has not yet submitted its list, are not appointed. So that is the situation in which we are. So the delay is from a party who is signatory to the agreement. And I hope that that party will be in a position to resolve this crisis so that the legislatures are complete in time. On the other issues, the commissions. The commissions are not yet organized. They are not yet organized because they are supposed to be reconstituted in accordance with the amended laws. Some of them are supposed to be established after the enactment of the laws establishing them. Some of these commissions are new, others are old, and those ones which are old are continuing to operate under the old law until those amendments are introduced in the assembly, after which they will be reconstituted. As for the ones which are new, they are to be established after the enactment of the establishment law. This is the situation in which we are, and this is where we are in terms of Chapter 1. In terms of Chapter 2, on the ceasefire and security arrangements, there is, yes, we say there is a ceasefire,
And as we might have, as we have heard yesterday from Her Excellency the Minister of Defense, there are some non-signatories to agreement who are still in violation or who are causing insecurity to us. These are people who are outside the agreement. And efforts are underway to ensure that these parties or these groups are brought to the agreement. So efforts are underway. You know them. We don't need to mention them, but we are still exerting our efforts to ensure that all the parties come under the agreement. This is where you sometimes find that there are some insecurities and there are which we call violations, but in actual fact, you call it a violation when that person is a signatory to the agreement. But anybody who is not signatory to the agreement, we don't call that a violation, but we call it an insecurity. Because he is not a signatory to the agreement. And these groups are still active in some parts of South Sudan, and their case will be addressed soon, and we are optimistic that peace will come to South Sudan. On the other hand, on the security arrangements, of course, we are quite aware that up to now we have not graduated the forces. We have not graduated the forces because of other issues which are not actually put into consideration by the agreement. And part of them, we as parties to the agreement are responsible for this delay. I say this because, one, the agreement provided for the establishment of cantonment sites, and from the cantonment sites, then the soldiers are screened and then taken for training in the training centers. It was unfortunate that we decided to disregard that and took the soldiers immediately from the there was no even cantonment, took them from wherever we took them straight to the training centers. There was no screening done. And for you to be in order to go to the cantonment site, actually the cantonment is needed for you to prove that you are competent. And to prove that you are competent, you must produce your rifle. This is number one condition. Produce your rifle. This will prove that you are competent. After that, you will now be put in the cantonment site. It is thereafter that you will be screened. And after screening and found fit for training, then you are sent for training. Unfortunately, all these things did not happen. We decided to pack them all and take them to the training centers with their families. And unfortunately, some of the women have delivered to the training centers. This is one of our major problems. Not that only, but also the international community is pressing on us. Despite the fact that they have passed the arms embargo, they are pressing on us to graduate them. And these people came to the training centers without firearms. They did not hand over their firearms in the cantonment sites. Now, we are being asked to graduate them. How do we graduate them? Do we graduate them with those sticks on which they were trained in the training centers? And do we graduate them with the sticks? What will they do? Should we call them soldiers? Should we call them an army? No, because an army must have weapons. This is the situation in which we are. And at the end of the day, we may be forced to graduate them because the UN, the Security Council, and the international community are pressing on us that we must graduate. This is the situation in which we are, and this is one of the main reasons which is delaying the graduation of these forces. The other one is the command, which is not yet agreed. And this is also connected with the arrangement with the organization of these forces. For you to determine the rank, the most senior rank in the army, you start organization from the bottom, and then you climb up. And as far as you go, the forces that will determine, it is the number of your forces that will determine the highest rank. But with us here, we have a big problem. We have a lot of ranks without NCOs and men or personnel. This is one of our major problems. And up to now, it is not yet determined as to what should be done. This is one of the major problems which is actually delaying the implementation of the agreement, that is the graduation of these forces. Not that only, but with the graduation of this first batch, we'll have to put in the second batch. Okay. This force which will be graduating, should it be under whose command? And these forces which are not yet trained will continue to be under the command of their leaders. Okay, this new force, should we put it under whose command? This is another issue. And these are some of the issues that have not been properly addressed by them. So that is the situation in which we are. Anyway, we have all these things are before the president, before the leadership of the parties to the agreement, so that they determine it and they bring it up for determination. One of the major issues, yes, the chair has told us that there are only 15 months left for us. Okay, if we are left with 15 months, are we capable of addressing all the other standing issues within these 15 months? This is the question that we need to determine. And this is what has been pushed to the presidency and to the parties to the agreement. Because they need to give us the necessary guidance as to what is the way forward. The constitution is not yet out. It's not yet out because of the delays that are happening in the process. For the constitution, it says the Constitutional Review Committee should be established by law, or commission should be established by law, which means that even though we had an ad hoc committee which had been working before, that committee will not continue unless it is established by law. The law is still not yet tabled before the National Legislative Assembly, and it is not established among other laws because there are so many other laws that are passed by the cabinet, and they are not yet tabled before the parliament, because the parliament up to this moment is not yet complete in its structures. So it is after the completion or establishment of the committees that all these will be presented. One of them is the law governing the establishment of the commission for drafting for the permanent constitution. Even though we don't have a permanent, there is nothing permanent in this world, but it is said that we will write a permanent constitution. Nevertheless, this permanent constitution, will it be possible for us, after this process, will it be possible for us as South Sudanese or for the commission to draft a zero draft, present it to the president, and the president establishes the constitutional conference, and the constitutional conference deliberate on the text. If accepted, if passed, then it goes back now to the normal legislative procedures. That is, it will now go, it will go to the president, and the president will then send it to the parliament for enactment. After enactment, it comes back to the president for assent and signature. Now, within this period, really, shall we be in a position to complete this process within the 15 months? This is another issue which is before us. And in case we don't complete it within that period, then what is the way forward? This is another issue before us. So we need to think of what to do in case the constitution does not come out in time. We need to think of what to do. And in the course of doing that, we have two options. We have two options. Either to run elections in accordance with the current constitution, and then elect the parliament, which will be a constituent assembly, to come and pass the constitution. And in so doing, we will have to amend the current constitution so that it conforms with what you have in mind. Or else, extend your period, and even though there have been so many extensions, you extend your period again so that you get enough time to pass your constitution. These are the options which are before us. That is the situation, and this is in accordance with chapter 1 and chapter 6 of the Constitution. All these, you have to think over them and come up with the way forward. Now, we go to the humanitarian affairs, humanitarian assistance and reconstruction. There is what we call the Special Reconstruction Fund. This is supposed to be established by law. The law is not there. You go to chapter 5, resource, economic and financial management. Well, these are the reforms, and the reforms have already started. Of course, reforms, when you talk of reforms, conducting a reform is not an event. It is a process. And if it is a process, then we should know that it is gradual. It is done gradually. And as long as, and when we say the transformation or the reforms have started, it means that they have started gradually until that time when you will be in a position to say, yes, by this time now we have done the reforms. Because whatever you do hastily, definitely will not be a success. So the best thing to do is to do it gradually. Even though the international community, even though they have not been doing it like that in their own countries, they expect us to do the impossible, which is not true. Because if you do things hastily, then definitely it is this same international community that will turn up at the end of the day and say, why did you do it like that? You have failed. So let us continue with the implementation, but it should be we'll accelerate it, but it should be slow and short.
Accelerate your
Yes.
finishing.
Okay. For chapter 5, which is truth, reconciliation, and healing, and compensation and reparation, and the hybrid court. See, before we go there, we have talked about the Judicial Reform Committee. The Judiciary Reform is a committee which is supposed to be headed not by us, but by IGAD. The chair and the deputy are supposed to be nominated by IGAD. We on our side, we have prepared our list. But IGAD has not brought it. Nevertheless, we are being asked to do it. How do we do it at a time when it is the duty of IGAD, which gave itself the authority and the power to do it? Up to now, they have not yet appointed these two people. And in the absence of the chair and his deputy, who are nominees of IGAD, then definitely there's no way the committee can proceed to conduct the reforms. So that is the situation about the judicial reform. For the truth and reconciliation and healing, well, this is supposed to be established by law. The law has been passed by the cabinet. It is pending presentation to the parliament. Also, you have the compensation and reparation authority, so also supposed to be established by law. And lastly, the hybrid court. The hybrid court. The international community is more interested in the establishment of the hybrid court rather than establishment of peace and security in South Sudan. This is why we are being pressed hard that you work hard for the establishment of the hybrid court. But the establishment of the hybrid court has its own procedures and mechanisms. There is the two parties, the African Union and the government of South Sudan are supposed to agree on the terms and conditions that will be included in the law establishing the hybrid court. And the government of it is the government of South Sudan that will enact the law establishing the hybrid court. And if all these are not done, then how are we expected to establish the hybrid court? But nevertheless, people are our neck. You are late. Why are you obstructing it? And this is why I was sanctioned by the American by the American Treasury, saying that I was obstructing the implementation of this. Okay, if I'm obstructing it, I have been sanctioned. Why did it not come into implementation? These are some of the issues we have. Because it's stating a fact. It's sometimes not liked by some people. But anyway, that is the situation in which we are. We are working hard to establish the hybrid court. But it will be established at the correct time. Because after all, we establish the hybrid court now, and then we will begin to pick people from among you here, then definitely we will run to the bush. Yes. We will run to the bush and they will not follow us there. So the most important thing is not the hybrid court, but the establishment of a permanent peace, where you bring in everybody. You bring everybody on board, and we are convinced that there is peace. It is thereafter, so that we don't give room for anybody to join somebody who has not yet joined us. If you bring them all in, after bringing them all in, and making sure that there is nobody there who is causing any problems, then you can now come and say, Michael, please go and answer before the hybrid court. I will not be going anywhere. I will be forced to go. But in the current situation now, if we establish the hybrid court and I'm called tomorrow, that you appear before the hybrid court, I will not accept. So why are people not realistic? That is the situation in which we are. I remember, okay. I remember before Ban Ki-moon could go, he came in his last visit to South Sudan here. I had the privilege of meeting him. And what he said, we have prepared $5 million. We have already put aside $5 million for the hybrid court. So you expedite it. I said, but Mr. Secretary General, are you for peace or for accountability? He said, why are you asking so? I said, I'm asking you like that because I believe that there cannot be any accountability as long as there is no peace. So the best thing that you work for is to ensure that peace is established. It is thereafter that you can make people accountable for whatever they did. So why don't you give us the $5 million for establishment of peace and maintenance of peace? It is thereafter that we will look into the issue of the hybrid court. Of course, my response was to him, it was not good, was not happy. Yes, I'm running out of time. So I've already run. I was not given time, actually. Yes, that is the situation in which we are. So the implementation of the agreement is in process. And for you, as governors in the states, your task is big. Because for us here at the national level, here in Juba, our capital, we don't feel all that is happening. But it is you at the state level who are feeling and who know what it is. So work hard, all of you. Unite your ranks, irrespective of your parties, irrespective of the agreement, whatever the agreement says, that was only an arrangement in order to achieve peace. So work together for the overall interests of the people in your state. And if you all work together, definitely peace will prevail in South Sudan and we will achieve the objective. We should not be carried away by conduct of some of our members, some of the members of the parties to the agreement. That should not be the norm. The norm should be let us work together for the overall interest of our people. Yes, in addition to that, I don't know if I'm allowed.
Your time is over.
Will I come back?
I don't know.
Okay, I need only 1 minute. That is something concerning my ministry. I'm Minister of Information, Telecommunication, Technology, and Postal Services. Some of you have been interfering with the telecommunication systems in your states. For your information, telecommunication is centralized. And what the operators do is that they only render you services. And if you are not rendered any service, please come to us. Complain to us, because these are private companies. The government does not own an operator. Government is not an operator, but a regulator. For that matter, if there is any problem, please bring it to us. Don't interfere with the with that operator on the ground. We know we have not reached all parts of South Sudan. These parts of South Sudan have not been reached because the operators are business people. They only look for highly or densely populated areas. This is where they go and put up their towers. But Mahal al Fogo comes in Nafar wala Mia Nafar, to them is a loss. So they won't render any services there. It is our duty as a government. We have what we call the Universal Access Fund. This is where we go and establish towers in areas where these people do not want to establish towers. Because the establishment of a tower is the most expensive. And we have already started doing that. We have started establishing towers in some parts of South Sudan. Areas like Buma, areas like Kuren, where in the Peace Village, we have in Rumbek, in the northern part of Rumbek, and so forth. We are working, and we have started now. We started this year, and we will continue to do it. So wherever you are, we'll get you wherever you are. If any place you think that is critical to have a service there, please contact us, but don't talk to the other operators. This is what I wanted to add.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My colleague will come and complete the rest.
Next is Josephine.
Thank you very much. The next is the Minister of Agriculture, Josephine Laru. But now I have to run. I have an important thing happening in my ministry. So I'm going to introduce this young man, Gabriel Joseph Shadar, to step. I will be back at 1. So please, thank you very much.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. I'd like to acknowledge the first Vice President, who is also the chair of this forum. And I would also like to acknowledge Dr. Charles Gichoi, the interim chair of RGMEC. It's a privilege to be here attending the Governors Forum. Colleagues from the cabinet, the international community present here, I greet you all. I'm not very sure and clear if I'm here as the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, or I have been asked to respond to the presentation of the interim chair of the RGMEC. I am in my, sorry?
You are a panelist.
Yes, a panelist in my capacity as the chair of South Sudan Opposition Alliance. I believe it is in that capacity that I have been requested to respond to the presentation of the chair of RGMEC. I wouldn't go to the extent of saying that I have been ambushed to that effect, but indeed I saw my name on this schedule only yesterday. So I will not be making any presentation, and I have no document to present to the Secretariat, contrary to what they had just asked me to do. I think the forum is an important forum for many reasons. It's obviously a forum to share information, to share knowledge, and perhaps also to share understanding, a common understanding of the implementation of the peace agreement. It's very important that both the national actors and the state actors have a shared understanding, a common understanding of the implementation of this peace agreement. The title of the agreement is very, very clear and quite encouraging. Implementation of the revitalized peace agreement to foster peace, stability, and prosperity in this country. But who are the actors at the national level? As we all know, the agreement was signed by at least 5 major actors, namely the incumbent Tigonu, the SPLM in opposition, South Sudan Opposition Alliance, the former detainees, other political parties, and so forth. So these are the parties to the agreement. From time to time, references are being made to the parties to the agreement. These are the parties to the agreement. The agreement document itself is a very, very clear document. And I believe that if the agreement document is implemented in letter and spirit, we will see what we are expecting to see in this country. That is a peaceful country, a stable country, a country that will be prosperous for all. Because indeed, as yesterday mentioned by the bishop, this country has been blessed with immense resources. But here we are, still trying to get out of civil strife, which unfortunately, and let us not forget, a lot of lives have been lost to achieve the liberation of this country. And yet, soon after our independence, we descended into another violent, vicious conflict that further led to the death of so many of our citizens. The revitalized government of national unity has a duty to ensure that permanent peace is achieved in this country, that stability is achieved in this country, that our people are lifted out of poverty and hunger. And we can do it. We have a framework of how this can be done. And I personally believe that the RRCs is an excellent document. What is failing us, what is failing the country, is its implementation as per the schedule. At the moment, we are not following the matrix. We have thrown that away. In October 2019, we came very, very close to having a crisis of implementation of this peace agreement. Because we did not fulfill pre-transitional implementation. The pre-interim tasks were not transitional tasks were not completed. But let us not take our country back to war. Let us try and find a solution So we became creative about the solution. And our solution was that which were not completed. That was the proposal of South Sudan Opposition Alliance. 2 years down the line, we are still here, and we have not completed implementation of the basic protocols of this agreement. There are 6 main chapters to the agreement. As we all know, Chapter 1 deals with the governance issue, and specifically reconstitution of the national and the state governments. I don't want to dwell on that, and we all know how far we have gone with that and what is remaining. The announcement of legislature at the 2 states, Unity and I think Western Bahrain. So, yes, there is progress in the implementation of Chapter 1. Okay. Chapter 2, yes, the main sticking point for the implementation of this agreement. And I just want to acknowledge the government of Sudan here for being bold enough to identify in Khartoum that one of the main root causes of conflict in South Sudan is the lack of national army. If a national army is put in place from the various units or formation, they believe that the importance of having a national army cannot be ignored. Yes, there is progress, but it is a very, very slow progress. And I think the revitalized government of national unity should take note of this concern and really try to expedite the remaining aspect of this particular chapter, the implementation of the permanent ceasefire and transitional security arrangement. The mechanisms were identified, the mechanisms have been operational, but not fully. The mechanisms have not been fully funded. So the main reason for the lack of expeditious implementation, as you always hear, is lack of funding and what have you. But we also need to really look beneath and find out really, is it just the lack of funding, political will to implement this agreement as per the document, or are we trying to fiddle with the implementation? And you know, this is our country. Let us all have this soul searching. Chapter 3, implementation, I think has been started. The Minister for Humanitarian Affairs called the first meeting some weeks ago, and I believe there is the process to form the special reconstruction fund, and of course it's being done in collaboration with the international community. This process will be expedited so that our people who are still living in the refugee camps, those who are still stuck in the IDP centers, you know, say this because my ministry is in the economic cluster, and I think the economic cluster over the last few years, the last few years, 1.5 years, has been working very, very hard to, put certain measures in place. We have been conducting investigations in most of the ministries and institutions of government, especially those that collect revenue. And you heard yesterday from the Vice President of the Republic and Chair of the Economic Cluster the impact of that work on the collection of non-oil revenue. And I believe more is being done in this aspect. And so we believe that, in the next few years, we will get to grips with the resource and economic as well as financial management of our country. The chapter regarding the transitional justice, my colleague has talked at length on that, and I think yes, there are issues there, especially with the establishment of the hybrid court, and in our interaction with the international community, what we are telling them in individual capacities, in our capacity as parties to the agreement, is that, be patient with the South Sudanese people. Be patient with our people. This agreement is going to be implemented, but the implementation is not an event. It is not something that can be done in 1 day or 1 year or 2 years. It's going to take time. And so, as we are pushing on with this, try to be understanding. Rome was not built in a day. Nor was it built in a year. But we will get there at the end of the day. In mind, what is happening in some of the neighboring countries that are much older than us, perhaps people are beginning to change their ideas and their opinion about what is happening here in South Sudan. So I believe together with our friends in the international community, we will be able to eventually the other chapter is that of the permanent constitution making. It's true, my colleague as a lawyer has already said that there is nothing called permanent. But yes, it is a part of the agreement, and so it has to be implemented. This country has to move forward and establish a permanent constitution. The process has already started, and I believe slowly but surely we will be able to achieve that permanent constitution so that we move away from this business of transitional this, transitional that, transitional everything. Everything cannot remain transitional. We need to reach to a level where we have something which we can call permanent. Whether technically or legally, there is nothing called permanent, but let us try and move away from this business of always having transitional this and transitional that. Yes, I've mentioned, the challenges or why the implementation of the peace agreement is rather slow, but let us not forget there have been successes. There are achievements, okay? And one of them is the cessation of hostility. Yesterday, the Minister of Defense did mention that even Soma, that is holding out at the moment, did actually sign the cessation of hostility December 2017. And so far, we can say confidently that there is relative peace across the country, at least in most parts of the country, minus Central Equatoria and Eastern Equatoria, and of course other recent events in Western Equatoria state. So in terms of political conflict or violent military conflict, we can say that, there has been reduction, and that's partly due to the implementation of the peace agreement. But that's not enough. We cannot replace the lack of violent political conflict with the prevalence of intercommunal violence across most states of our country.
Now 1 minute for your ministry.
Oh, 1 minute. Okay. Right. So, okay. So the successes which we need to register includes cessation of hostility, relative peace, and for the principles for the parties to the agreement. I think confidence building, although it's still an ongoing process, is one of the things which we can record here. And it's happening. The last couple of, Council of Ministers meeting, we get, the president joking with the first vice president, so I believe, there is confidence building among the parties to the agreement, and this is good. This is good, and this is something which we need to encourage. There's also voluntary returns of some of our people from the refugee camps and from the IDP centers. That is also what we need to acknowledge. But on the whole, more needs to be done by the parties to the agreement. More needs to be done by the monitors of the agreement, including RJMEC. More needs to be done by the guarantors of this agreement. And more needs to be done by the international community in general. So we cannot detach ourselves from the slow implementation of this agreement and expect good, positive results at the end of the day. Let all the actors get involved and be serious. Those who need to be held accountable should be held accountable. Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you. You don't have 1 sentence to tell them about your ministry?
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, as the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, of course, my preference is very, very clear. My preference is that, this government, the revitalized government of national unity must prioritize agriculture and food security. Agriculture and food security is the backbone of the economic development of this country. We can only ignore this at our own peril. So we need to put money into agriculture. Let us invest the little money, the little oil revenue that is coming, and other funds that are coming. We need to invest this in agriculture so that our people can attain food security. We already have a motto in our ministry, which we developed in July when we had the National Agriculture. Just saying, as a country, let us produce
Abuba salamnya Jalamya, Matakore, Jalamya.
And yet we are not benefiting from this. If we cannot grow our own food through rainfall, we need to start investing in irrigated agriculture, and we can. So for me, agriculture is first, food is first. Before we do anything, including coming here to sit here, we need to eat. We need to have food. So food cannot be overridden. It is the first, and it must be.
Jalam take, full fakir, jalam take. Jalam take, yang majar, jalam take. Jalam take, wanika, jalam take. Jalam take, tabandenga, jalam take. Full fakir, mada salam. Ya ludu salam. Monin biga tamam, biga murta. Motoron anjil, jalam ya. Jalam ya. Yunume, betalau, kejejin, betalau, abuba, salamnya, matakore, jalamnya, mama, salamnya.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Though I was not given a warning, but all the same, this is the implementation of the agreement. We have heard the statement and the report briefing from the interim chair of RDMAC. Is very clear. I want to underline some words that he used. He used the word critical task that remain unimplemented. This is very important. These critical tasks, why they are critical? They are critical because if we don't implement them, we don't have an agreement. This is a simple fact. Among these critical tasks, and I mentioned this yesterday, is the unification of the forces that are right now in the training centers. I really didn't want to make this into like a party debate, but my comrade Michael Mokwe makes it very impossible for one to avoid sight. I am involved. I have been involved from day one as part of the security mechanism. It is unfair to say that the security mechanism did not do their work. The security mechanism under very difficult circumstances. Not only the issue of resources, but also issues of political nature among the parties affected their work, but they continue to navigate as mechanism using their mandate as given by the agreement. This must be stated, and this is critical, because they have shown that the parties actually can implement this agreement, and this agreement can work. They have shown the political leaders a way. When we started working with these mechanisms, there were lots of difficult political issues, including the issue of the 10 states. We focused on our mandate as security mechanism, a number of activities of confidence building. Initially, they have visited forces in each other's places without fear, taking a risk. The point I want to underscore here is that the delay, the serious delay in implementation of Chapter 2 has nothing to do with the mechanisms. There is the challenge of resources, but I also want to talk a little about resources. To be fair on the government, even before we established this article, the previous IG have allocated resources sporadically to the implementation of particularly Chapter 2. This is to
You will come be patient.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try to make it very short. But I must underline some issues. I'll make it very short. Comrade Joseph Ilago spoke about whether we are dilly-dallying with the agreement or is it really because there are issues. And it's important for the governors because the governors are also parties who are going to be working in the implementation of the agreement. And are they going to allow their political affiliation prevent them from working together like the mechanisms are working together? This is crucial. This is very important. Now, let me come to the implementation, cantonment. We have established cantonment. And cantonment happens in two sites. Barracks and newly established cantonment areas. They were established, it's a fact. Money was spent on it, and this money came from the government, not from partners. In fact, partners only contributed to the security arrangement on technical issues, technical support. But as such, the security sector, the unification of forces and so on, and the training, we did not receive much from the partners. So, cantonment were done. Yes, a fair point was made by Honorable Michael McQuay that a proper screening was not done at a cantonment site. Yes, it is true that many forces were taken to the training centers, but in the training centers, the JTSC, the Joint Technical Security Committee, have undertaken the screening of the forces. This is a fact. They have screened forces. Some of those that were found not eligible were put aside for the DDR because of the funding or lack of funding. DDR could not take them out of the training centers. That is the challenge. DDR is not adequately funded to actually undertake its activities. I mentioned this yesterday, that funding for EDR is very important. That has affected, not only that, the JTAC established medical teams that went and did medical screening for those who are in the training centers. This is another fact. The forces in training centers have actually completed their training more than a year ago. And yet they have been still sitting in those cantonment sites, training centers. This is a fact. The other fact is that the unification, the top command, has nothing to do with the fact that you have to start from below. If you graduated the forces, these are called the unified forces. Who is to command them? And that question was asked by Honorable Michael Makwe. The person to command them is the unified joint command. Therefore, the process of the unification of the command happens before the graduation and deployment of the forces. It's natural. It's the process. This is how it is in the agreement. In the meantime, those forces that have not gone to the training centers will continue to be under the command and control of the JDB. The JDB will only be abolished once the unification is complete. Once the unification is complete, there will only be one mechanism that will continue. And this is the SDSR board, which will continue to be overseeing the process of transformation of the security sector. And not necessarily because of those challenges, but because of our own, I don't want to call it attitudes, but we need to come to the realization that this country have no any other option other than this agreement. It's the ticket that will take us out to ensure transition and to fulfill that theme. So the arms embargo, yes, is a problem, and it's a big problem. I talked about it yesterday. It's implement those. Comes April, and even before April, if we realize this, that would be the beginning of a serious dialogue with the international community on the lifting of the sanction. Do you graduate the forces without arms? Most of the forces that went to the training centers without arms are actually the opposition forces. And I'm going to be very honest. There were issues of trust, confidence. And at that time, now the situation is different. We have come a long way. The issue of the arms should not prevent graduation. You graduate them, and those combatants, and be requested to go and get their arms where they left them. Our challenge would be ammunition. We have an opportunity to apply to the Security Council for exemption and so on. So actually, 4 weeks. If the committees that have been established by the JDB are now funded and they go and complete the work because they are actually just doing a work that they have already done before. Yes, we have a challenge of ranks. This is up to the principal to address. They can address it with the stroke of a pen because the committees have done their work. It is not an issue to prevent graduation. Next 4 weeks, next 6 weeks, something needs to happen by way of graduation.
3 minutes, move to the other chapters.
Thank you, I'm done.
Okay. Thank you. Now, I want to move, give Dr. Marian, I want to move his presentation from tomorrow to today, from 10 o'clock, because tomorrow present. Presidential initiatives on peace. I wanted him to connect it with like wildlife, public service, and roads. We talked about maybe water. We want to talk about remedy of floods.
Bajar jalam take, salam take, wanika salam take, salam take, tabandenga salam take.
Opportunity. What I will begin with, especially with our honorable governors, deputy governors, ministers, is to share with you the issue of presidential peace initiatives, the need that will help you promote peace in your states. I will begin first with the Rome Peace Initiative. I think this is very important for you to know. Now, you remember His Holiness the Pope Francis, together with the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Moderator General of the Presbyterian Church. These three church leadership internationally invited our political leaders, including the government leadership, for a retreat in Rome. We are all aware, His Excellency First Vice President was there, and all the members, including civil society organizations in South Sudan, including equally civil societies, the church leadership in South Sudan, all our major churches here. And they went to Rome, to the people of South Sudan, and to bring reconciliation and working together among our political leaders. As a result of that retreat, you remember the drama which happened in it. First thing was the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, and the other churches, you know, their history broke away from the Catholic Church. And they have never been sitting together. So the issue of South Sudan actually brought the togetherness of all the different churches in the Christian faith. For For the first time, the Pope sat on the same table with the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Moderator General, that these shoes were kissed by Pope. And secondly, the fact that they brought all the Christian churches together to try and work together. Since we broke away, they broke away from each other a long time. So this is a great impact on the peace process for us. That started off San Egidio, which is actually a combination of the Catholic Church, members of the Catholic Church. They are represented in 70 countries of the world. In Europe, in Asia, in America, in Latin America, in Australia. 70 countries across the world. They have been involved in the mediation in something over 18 peace processes, including the peace processes in Africa. And that is like the peace in Mozambique, where Renamo had a problem, the peace process in Angola, where the MPLA and UNISA had problems, the peace in the West Africa. So the function as a Christian organization were empowered and inspired by this meeting, this retreat, that they should do something about the peace process in South Sudan. That's how San Egidio, a Catholic organization, started the peace process with the whole out groups with the government. The whole out group, SOMA, which is South Sudan Opposition Movement Alliance, is a group of 6 political parties. 6 honorable governor of our first delegation to meet SOMA group in Rome. In that meeting, which was a very successful meeting, we signed what they call Rome Declaration. And Rome Declaration stresses the fact that the whole art groups can become a part of the overall peace process through peace and through negotiations. And that we should be able to allow humanitarian access. They honored the fact that the cessation of hostilities mentioned by our Minister of Defense a while ago, the cessation of hostilities of December 23rd, 2017, they also adhered that they will respect it. And that there should be a continuous dialogue between the group. So the declaration of Rome Declaration is a very important part in which SOMA, the whole out groups, the 6 political parties, promise that they will bring peace. Now, on our second meeting with them, we signed the second one, which is Rome Resolution. Rome Resolution stresses more the cessation of hostilities, was involved personally in coordination with the leadership of the church, as you remember, since the time of the Rome retreat. The delegation was formed from all the stakeholders within the RRCs. We had a delegation with the representation of all the 6 parties, as you know, said Sfera Mayo, SOA, with all its different divisions in it, attended most of those peace talks with other organized groups, the other partners, and it was a huge gathering. So Rome Initiative is a serious initiative. After signing the Rome Resolution, we had a third meeting. In the third meeting, a split happened within Soma. Two parties broke away. That is the real SPLM by Paganamum. I don't know if he's real, I don't know what we are. But that is his name anyway. The real SPLM. We had also the other group, which is led by our General Paul Malone. So these two parties broke away from the other four, which is led by Thomas Cirillo. And then Sir Egidio asked us whether we will continue talking to them. We said, no, we are interested in peace. Even if they break up into 6, we can speak to differently, all of them. That's why we are talking to Paul Malone and Real SPLM by Paganamum separately, and the other 4 led by Thomas Cirillo, the other 4 parties, we are meeting them separately in Rome. But we are encouraging them to be united. And we told them clearly, we are not involved in the division that is happening among you, because you all know that when we were talking with Khartoum, they were trying, if you are separate, we will talk to each one of you. I think this information is very important for you, at least in explaining the issues of the whole art groups. Now, so we have been meeting the real SPLM by Pagan and Paul Malone's party. We have been meeting them twice. We met them once in Rome and twice in Nairobi, Kenya. We went to Naivasha, which was a good place to remind us. The San Egidio took us there because they know we are all the same people of the CPA, and they be the spirit of the CPA. When we sleep in those rooms, we may wake up the next morning and embracing each other and become to one. So my good took the room in it. So in the morning I told him, my brother, you slept in the bed of our late chairman. I think there is a new spirit now. Let us agree. Because he could have come to you in a dream, since you spent the night in where our peace process was born. You see, so the atmosphere in all these discussions was harmonious. We met, continued meeting, Soma in Rome. Now, we had agreed, one of the most important agreements was that Soma had agreed that our officers, the representatives, will be trained by the CTSAM so that they become a part of the monitoring in Juba here with the rest of the CTSAM representatives. Now, Soma was saying, no, they will not go to Juba unless we agree on this declaration of principles, which we were negotiating. And we said this was not a part of the agreement. In the end, there was the issue of where do we find money for the soldier officers to join the CTSAM to be trained. So the government of Italy, Minister of Foreign Affairs said, okay, they will find the money. 1, 2, they will use Djibouti. They have got a base in Djibouti. They can then be able to train them in Djibouti so that they are told what terms of you joining the CTSAM, so that you can become a part of the CTSAM, because these days there is a lot of accusations, ambushing, and the rest, and Soma will say, no, it is not us. It must be the government. So we told them, you become a part of the monitoring of the CTSAM, by CTSAM, especially by IGA, Dr. Weiss, in the last agreement, that accept to go for training in Djibouti. After training, they will then come to Juba, which will be a special arrangement. We told them, if you are scared that the incidents in the field, you bring your soldiers to cantonment site, you choose your cantonment site where you want your soldiers to be, and then to become a part of the peace process. I think this is important for you to know. Now, why did the president and the government decide to pause the talks? You know the incident which happened in Numile Road, where the two, so this is an intentional act which happened. Of course, this angered the president and the people of South Sudan and their government, and that's why? Because Soma has agreed and signed cessation of hostilities, and they continue to do ceremony itself, and at least the church leadership has been coming to the president to say, okay, although this act has harmed innocent women and church people have been killed, we believe that the peace talks should continue. So the pause is there. It means one day, one of these days, the Rome Peace Initiative will also, there is a possibility that the talks will resume at the right time. We are happy. All the other political leaders have also been urging, including the SPLMI leadership and other political parties, that these talks should continue. Our civilian members of parliament and others have come saying that these talks will continue. So there is a willingness, but the initial killing, even a single citizen of this country killed wrongly, I think we should all be very angry about it, because life taken in that touch with us all the time. So I think this is the problem. We need your support too, and we also need that this is a part of your responsibility in promoting the RRCs so that they will become all those. But our president has been trying to resolve the conflict in our region here. There's a problem between Ethiopia and Egypt. There's a problem between Sudan and Ethiopia. There is a problem which is connected because of the position of our president with the president of Egypt. He went the last visit to Cairo, where he met the president of Egypt, and actually they encouraged him that this thing about the dam in Ethiopia cannot lead to war, and that it should be through dialogue. He has also been visiting the issue of the dam. I think it would be better to be handled with the help of the region through dialogue. those whispering talks have been going on. This second one is Abiy, Ethiopia and the Sudan. You know the issue of the border between them, to the extent that they had a military conflict. Ethiopia and Sudan, now there is no real military confrontation. They agreed that we can resolve this through dialogue and through mechanisms which are better. So it has made an impact. But we are not beating drums about it. Like others, there are other people who bring peace and they beat all the drums. But I think it is something that you should be aware. The peace initiative, this is also indicating that our other members, our other neighbors in the neighborhood, I think that is something we thought we should share with you and be aware of as an initiative which is important. Finally, you have got the issue of the other opposition groups which have been fighting the Sudan government. That is the Darfuri groups in their different factions, and the SPLM in the north, as you know them, led by also other groups. And this one is the role which is led, in fact, by Tut Galwak, delegated with his delegation by the president, has been going in order to try and bring this. That is something you know already. I don't need to talk much about it. This peace process, Khartoum peace, going on. Recently, there was supposed to be a meeting again in Kampala. Trying to encourage the coming together of the members of IGAD, especially with the present crisis between Hamdok and the president of the Sovereign Council, to be the right person to be involved in this process because he has good relations with all these countries. And I think these are presidential peace initiatives we should all know, and we need to support our leadership so that these peace processes are encouraged. So Rome initiative is paused. We hope the talks may resume when the president gives his direction and after consultations with all these other various groups. These are the peace processes. I am obliged to share them with you as governors in the state so that it underscores the importance how it can also help our communities in the states to be aware of. And
thank you.
And if there are friends with some of those people, I know some of you here, friends with Pagan, Thomas Cirillo. I'm not accusing anybody, but if there are friends there, please also put pressure on them so that peace. Thank you, Mr. First Vice President.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now we listen to presentation from IGAD. IGAD briefing on their role and uncertainties facing our access implementation and way forward. I hope Dr. Wise is there. Or it is Aleu? Okay. Further.
Thank you very much, Excellency Vice President. I was expecting a PowerPoint presentation to share with the governors. So if you give me just a few minutes. Yes, already there. All right.
Switch quickly.
Yes, this presentation I'm going to take you a little bit out of the context of just peace agreement to introduce distinguished excellencies, governors, state ministers as well may not know what IGAD is. And then we may also be operating within your own jurisdiction at some activities, as well as the RSS way forward. IGAD covers, as you've seen in the map, 8 countries. That's Sudan, Ethiopia, Djibouti, Kenya, Uganda, Somalia as the original countries that established IGAD in 1986. And then Eritrea joined IGAD in 1993 after independence. South Sudan joined IGAD in November 2011 after its independence. As you've seen in the mission and vision statements, IGAD aspires to promote peace and stability in the region. That's the as the Intergovernmental Authority on Drought and Development in 1986. And in 10 years later on, in 1996, from the establishes DD, Drought and Development. By the year 1996, heads of states of government revitalized IGAD. So the word revitalization did not start with South Sudan, but started from 1986, where the mission and vision was reviewed. And as much as drought, calamities of this natural declaration on the principles that guided the mediation between Sudan and South Sudan, the SPLA and the NCP, we all arrived at the comprehensive peace agreement. Next. You could see where IGAD sits. It sits in the Greater Horn. It's in the Horn of Africa, but with the expansion of South Sudan, Sudan, and these are areas where IGAD work. I will not read all of them, but I will focus on 3 major areas: the promotion of peace and security in the region, and work within food and security aspects, encouraging member states to develop their own food and security and sustainability. And third, to harmonize policies on health, where we work jointly, and also mitigate drought and desertification. Next. The IGAD structures, as you've seen from the photo there, that's the highest body of IGAD, is the Assembly of Heads of States and Government. We could see those are the heads of states of the region, meeting to make policy decisions within the region, and then beneath that highest level of policy making, there is where we start Committee of Ambassadors accredited to IGAD. Next. IGAD Secretariat. IGAD Secretariat is the executive body for the work of IGAD, and is headed by the executive secretary, who is elected every 4 years, and this runs from the secretariat. There are 4 major divisions: the DAF, the Department of Administration and Finance, agriculture, forestry, and environment, peace and security, and last is the health and units. Those specialized units or agencies are the IGAD service. Foreign Service Institute based in Djibouti. We have IGPAC, IGAD Climate Prediction and Application Center that's based in Nairobi. We have the IGAD Livestock Program also based in Nairobi. I will take you a little bit about some of the programs because some of those applications are necessary in South Sudan. Can tap into their own benefits. IGAD Climate Prediction and Application Center work on areas of climate forecast, capacity development, which is across all member states, Eastern Africa, because it has extra members from the East African community. Those members are Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, and they are working on forecasting climate. You could see the reports when calamities are about to happen. You could actually help your institutions tapping into these existing mechanisms. So for desert locusts, where migration started of the locusts from Pakistan, we have seen floods because we forecast rain, etc. Next. IGAD Center for pastoral areas and livestock development. As we heard yesterday, His Excellency, the First Vice President, mentioned that population-wise, our livestock are 3-to-1, and this offers 3 programs. One is the bachelor degree on dry land economics and agroeconomics management, as well as diplomas that we conclude at Nairobi University or Makerere University and other distance learning. This is a scholarship program offered to all students from the region, fully covered by IGAD. Our tertiary affiliations are related to some universities in the region as well as the US. Mechanism, you might have early warning. We have CIWEROs in the country where we gather information from public sources. This information normally target communal violence. So we target issues that might elevate the confrontation to communal violences. We gather this information, we analyze, we feedback to decision makers. Our counterparts vary from one country to another. The focal point is South Sudan is the Peace Commission. In Kenya, Uganda is the Ministry of Interior, and the intervention is always at national level. Education of the youth targeting is not also IGAD alone, it's IGAD plus Tanzania, and we work on the escalation of elements of extremism to avoid occurrence. Now, just on programs, IGAD Drought, Disaster Resilience and Sustainable Initiative, or Sustainability Initiative, is the flag bearer of IGAD. Since this Idrisi initiative works on the areas where issues of drought are addressed, you could see from the presentation issues of dryland, issues of natural resources, issues of management, coordination, harmonization with member states cover all these aspects, and we provide technical support to national ministries working in those fields. So the responses of IGAD normally are member state based. Next. Read and document, and these are part of the migration. We may not stop people migrating, but we would enhance the responses of member states on those issues. Next. Mediation support unit happens to be the biggest program after C1. After you get the warning, you provide the necessary responses, and we are based on 3 areas. This is the only unit that has moved to South Sudan, simply because I was heading into Djibouti and I moved it back when I came as head of mission. Processes as well as regional IGAD-led mediation processes, and work on building national capacities on conflict prevention. The main aspects of IGAD's intervention is always capacity building, prevention of conflict, and then resolution comes naturally when we are unable to address conflict from escalation. Last 2 areas of youth in peace and security, women in peace and security, we empower youth, we build their capacities, and we advocate for youth inclusion as per UN Security Council resolutions 2250 and 1325. Next. IGAD Health Program, maybe this is a program that was heavily felt in member states of recent. COVID-19 response has been one of our major intervention areas. We still have also a regional center for or center of excellence for cancer based in Addis Ababa, and then programs around HIV/AIDS, TB, and malaria, which are regional programs. Also, the target here is harmonization of national policies, working together jointly as a region within one policy framework. Lastly, we have regional medicine regulation program, where instead of each country having separate mechanisms for medicine regulation and new medicines, then there is a talk of an organized regional response to that. Next. This is PSD, Peace and Security Division, and this just gives you an overall how IGAD work in the area of peace. We have a framework called CPMR, Conflict Prevention, Management and Resolution, and information, providing scenarios, interventions at national level, and followed by mediation support unit, providing recommendations to the executive secretary on regional interventions if needs be, or call for summits if needs be, and then the decisions will be taken, the processes is engaged. South Sudan implementation mechanisms, as you've seen, the bodies created by the peace agreement, like RGMEC headed by General Charles, CITESAM headed by General Shomi, yet also the envoy creates a space to facilitate when needs arise of IGAD interventions and mediation. We have an envoy on Somalia, as we've talked earlier, Somalia has federal states that are not necessarily a unified country, because though is state formation, discussion dialogues are happening between the central government in Mogadishu, facilitated by IGAD, and Somaliland, which is a breakaway so far. Other units like Puntland and Pusaso are part of the Somali government so far. We have 3 programs under it as well. The political affairs program is necessary for us to know, because if we are going to work on elections tomorrow, there will be some sort of assistance that could be required of IGAD to render this program. And then we have ISSP, which is a program that works on IGAD security sector program, working with the ministries related to security, building their own national capacities, etc. So this is just in a nutshell a brief about IGAD. Next. Key partners of IGAD, as you've seen, the list is big. One of our major partners is the EU. We still also have other partners, Norway, Kingdom of Sweden, Danish Kingdom, other partners from the UN, as you've seen. Thank you. Next. Cooperation. We work through cooperation, we work with international organizations, we work with other RECs, international organizations like the Organization of Islamic States, the EU. We work with the UN, various UN sister ECOWAS from Western Africa. We have REMS like ICGR, the International Center for Great Lakes, which is an organization South Sudan is a member. There is another organization called the East African Standby Team. South Sudan is not yet a member, but has an observer status. And then we have also civil society organization, regional and international civil society, like Accord, CMI, etc. Next. Now, relations with the AU on peacemaking, that sometimes we need a push from partners. Those relations are governed by 3 elements. The first is the element of a principle of subsidiarity and a principle of complementarity, and the principle of advantage, which is the comparative advantage. Normally, the region responds first. That's the comparative advantage. As we heard from His Excellency the Minister of Presidential Affairs of previous South Sudan and ongoing South Sudanese mediation processes, the ability to be listened to comes as a comparative advantage for countries knowing that the intervener, like in the case of President Salva Kiir, may not have bad interests and bad intentions, but he would want to work towards convening for the better good of all the region. So subsidiarity comes that the region responds first, and then we ask for an intervention at complementary level by the African Union. Next. Now on ARCES, I think there is not much to add. We have listened to the organs that are the follow-up on ARCES. If RGMF has spoken, there is not much to add, but I would flag a few areas that I think would need for policy organs and parties to think through. The role on policy level, where you could do power sharing, those could be areas that we need to flag and start thinking ahead of time and how we can engage around that. Also, there are 2 major issues in the implementation, as we heard from previous speakers, the issue of timelines and the issue of funding. And those issues might not be an uncertainty, but may drag the implementation to a brink of a challenge. Issues of census and elections, they're within a time frame, and if we are unable to expedite, it will be of a challenge meeting the timelines. I believe the international community would like to see an end of the transition, like one of the ministers has spoken. And in order for that to happen, timelines matters. Lastly, there are a few issues around funding. Those institutions created by the peace agreement that would need and require funding. We have heard the situation of the financial development around oil. And yesterday, His Excellency Vice President responsible for economic cluster talked about generating funding from other sources. Next. On these aspects, they are part of the peace agreement that would be for the parties themselves to advance and see how we could go through. His Excellency Mike McCoy speaking about the issues of transitional justice, issues related to the hybrid code, etc. And those challenges on when can they be implemented, I think they're left for the parties, but the international community eager for per se would be interested in knowing that timelines are managed and the agreement is implemented in the spirit and the letter. Next thing on ownership. The second thing on ownership is also educational. It has to go, the peace agreement needs to be known by the public in the states at the grassroots levels, so people see where they could actually hold their own principles accountable. Thirdly is the issue of create wealth for the next generation, whether it's oil stabilization or the future generation funds and how these would impact the implementation. Thank you very much. I think this is the last of this presentation. And I hope we have shared with you what IGAD is all about. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we're going to listen to the Minister of Justice, Constitutional Affairs. I delayed him to the last so that they can come and wrap up on legal issues and legislation.
Kalau Abuba salamnya, salamnya, mata kore salamnya, mama salamnya.
I greet everyone who is here. And before I go into my presentation, as it were, I have to make a little to be making a presentation on laws and legislation, the issues and challenges. However, what I'm going to do is not a presentation. It will be a brief outline of what the Ministry of Justice has been doing
in relation to the implementation of the RRCs. Brief outline that is. That we have been doing, because I feel like a presentation will need a much more space of that. Your Excellency, the first Vice President of the Republic, Excellencies, Vice Presidents of the Republic,
Salam take, wane konga salam take. Salam take, jadala salam take. Salam.
Issues in South Sudan, the issues and challenges. The purpose of my briefing to this forum is to make highlights on the enactment process of the nation of the Revitalized, the Republic of South Sudan, 2018. Since 2005 to the 9th of July 2011, the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs presented for enactment 69 substantive and procedural laws. After the independence to this year, the ministry also processed an enactment of 74 laws, among them accession to various United Nations conventions, African Union treaties, and regional trade organization treaties. As part of the Ministry of Justice role in the implementation of RRCs 2018, the National Council of Ministers in January 2021 mandated the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs to trigger implementation of chapters 5 that is the mechanisms under that chapter are the commissions for truth, reconciliation and healing, the compensation and reparation authority, and the hybrid court 20 of the RRCs, which deals with judicial reforms. Excellencies of the RRC, the process for establishment of the Commission for Truth, Reconciliation and Healing, the minister established a task force in the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs to coordinate and oversee the work of the technical committee as per Article 5.2.1.3 of the RRCs. This committee consists of 33 members drawn from relevant government institutions, civil society organizations, religious leaders, and women groups. The technical committee was launched by His Excellency the First Vice President of the Republic on the 30th of June 2021. The committee has consultation work. The technical committee was trained in the month of September 2021, and they are to be deployed to the states to conduct national consultation for the period of 1 month in areas to be identified. The data collected from the consultations will be compiled, analyzed, and be made public, and shall be the basis for legislation for the establishment of the Commission for Truth, Reconciliation, and Healing. Now, Compensation and Reparation Authority. Already, the task force in the Ministry of Justice is developing a plan and roadmap for the establishment of the hybrid court. In fact, is a mechanism that is shared between the African Union and the government of South Sudan. By the provisions of the agreement, it is the African Union to establish the hybrid court. But then it is the government of South Sudan that has to draft the law for the establishment of this court. Now, the agreement provides that initially the African Union Commission is to provide broad guidelines for the establishment of the court, and by necessity, agree with the government of South Sudan in how to translate these guidelines into the text of the legislation for the establishment of the court. We are waiting, and the African Union Commission, on how to move this process forward. Some consultative process had been done earlier before the establishment of the revitalized transitional government of national unity. But it was felt that these consultations needed to be reviewed in order to provide a chance for those South Sudanese stakeholders who were supposed to be covered in the consultation to be put on board. That's why we are trying to technically resolve how to approach the review of whatever was the result of those consultations. There are pressures around this, but this is not the place and the time for me to delve into the position of the Ministry of Justice with regards to the establishment. Need to be guided by the leadership of the government of South Sudan and also by the views of South Sudanese stakeholders on how to approach these broad guidelines that we are expecting from the African Union. Implementation of Chapter 6, which is the permanent constitution-making process, concluded a series of preliminary consultations for a workshop on the permanent constitution-making process. The RJMAC handed to the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs the resolutions of the workshop on the basis of which the task force of the Minister of Justice drafted a bill for the constitutional making process. Now, this workshop targeted the parties signatories to the agreement and the other stakeholders like the civil society. And it was meant to work and think through the design of the process for implementation of the constitutional making. It's the resolutions of that workshop that informed the the permanent constitutional making process bill 2011. On the 26th of August 2021, the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs submitted the constitutional making process bill 2021 to the Ministry of Cabinet Affairs for deliberations and approval. The bill was discussed and passed and is being forwarded to the Transitional National Legislature for enactment, among other bills. It's also worth mentioning that the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs submitted the National Council to the National Council of Ministers the constitutional amendment bills number 8 and number 9 and security laws amendment bills. These are the South Sudan People's Defense Force law, National Police Service law, the Correctional Service law, Wildlife Service law, Civil Defense Service law, the National Security Service bill, and the political parties. All of the amendment bills have been passed at the level of the Council of Ministers, are on their way to be tabled before the national legislature for enactment. Implementation of Article 1.17, that is judicial reform. The Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs and Intergovernmental Authority, IGAD, developed the terms of reference for the establishment of the Judicial Reform Committee. The approved terms of reference for the establishment of the Judicial Reform Committee were signed by the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs and by the Ambassador, Dr. Ismail West, and the chairperson of RJMAC on 29th June. Now, the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs is waiting from IGAD nominations by the stakeholders for the establishment of the Judicial Reform committee, including the names of the chairperson and deputy chairperson to be forwarded to the National Council of Ministers for appointment. Already we are aware that IGAD is in the process of screening the applications for the position of this committee. We are also aware that parties signatory to the agreement have sent the names of their nominees to IGAD for also a screening of the agreement. However, this being a governance forum, I have just small observations to make and for the benefit of the governors and their governments in the state. And this relates to the role of the Minister of Justice. The Minister of Justice is the chief legal advisor of all levels of government in the country. Its role in that capacity, apart from offering legal advice to all levels of authority in the country, its role is to draft laws, contracts being entered into by any government institution at the state or national level, and the ministry represents the government institutions in civil cases before courts and also the primary criminal matters at the national and state level. Now you will notice the ministry has legal administrations at the level of the state and also in the national institutions of governance. It's therefore important for us to note that the legal administration at state level are directly under the authority of the Minister of Justice and constitutional laws. These legal administrations at the state level are not under the responsibility of the state ministries of law enforcement, and while exercising these powers, the state governments are always required to collaborate and cooperate with the legal administrations in their respective states. And in order to do that, let me underline what His Excellency the First Vice President said here in his remarks yesterday. Advising the governors with the constitution, transitional constitution of the Republic of South Sudan. Sudan. Important that each and every governor, each and every and deals with the area of exclusive competencies at the state level by the government levels. You have chapter at the national level, while at the same time, the states have a role to play legislative powers in certain situations for the national legislation in those areas. And then there are areas of residual powers under E. So it makes it easier for governance at all levels to know their areas of competence. And that's why the need to refer these schedules becomes very, very important. The other legal document that's important for you at the state level is the Local Government Act. Under the Local Government Act, you have the competencies at the state level as well as competencies at the level of the local governments. These acts are very, very important for the government at the state level, but more importantly, the state constitutions. More importantly, the state constitution. So you must have these three sets of law: the national constitution, the state constitution, and the local government act. You will find that governance is to be done by law. Done by law, you must be very familiar with the law, and it makes it easier for you and for the people you are governing. From that perspective, the Ministry of Justice is already engaged with one of our partners to print for us the copies of the constitutions and the Local Government Act. And we will ask each and every governor to present to us their copies of the state constitutions, which we will need to review in order to conform with the transitional constitution of South Sudan, and then copies be printed and be given to the governors and the commissioners at the local government. Briefly is the outline has been doing relating to the implementation of the agreement. However, let me add quickly, the ministry as it functions needs to develop a policy and strategic document with a view to reform the ministry itself. Already, we are working with a consultant on this document. Now, it is that policy document, the strategic plan of the ministry that will involve you and us. For that to happen, plan and pledge to hold conversations with the governors and their respective institutions at the state level in your locations. And should there be any issues connected with what you want to know about the Ministry of Justice, what you want to bring for legal advice, then we will do that at that level. Thank you.
Thank you, Molana. Thank you. Now we're 3 minutes after 1. Then we can go for a break, lunch, and please, 45 minutes. We must start at exactly 2 so that we can listen presentation of Minister of Peace Building. Now, every presentation has been done, then he will talk about peace building. And then Yenda will come next. Thank you very much. Still be here. Huh? The lunch. Okay, if the lunch is not ready, you stretch yourself, you stand up, then we do the exercise shown to us yesterday by Dr. Julia, and then we resume so that parkour can. No. Let's not kill time. Just stretch your legs. Then Peter Parkour can, Stephen Parkour can present. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay, because the discussion, they might ask question today at 4. Can you make it?
I would like to see that there's a possibility to come before 4.
Okay. Yeah, discussion is here at 1:45. Yes, you stretch. Stretch yourself.
Jino bulung jalam take, salam take, Emmanuel Ade salam take, salam takun, tumkulu salam takun, salam takun, tumkulu salam takun, salam takun, epire kulum salam takun, salam takun, salam takun, dolfakir mada salam, ya lude salam. Monin biga tamam biga murda motorona jil salam ya yunu me betalau bejejen betalau abuba salam ya matakore jalam ya mama salam ya salam take kal menyang salam take salam take kal menyang salam take ay jang mamur salam take ay jang mamur salam take. Mata salam, ya rude salam. Monin biga tamam, biga murta, motoron anjil. Salam ya, iyunume, betalau, kejejen, betalau, abuba salamnya, mata kore salamnya, mama salamnya. Salam take, full fakir salam take, yang majar salam take, wanika salam take, tabandenga salam take, full fakir mada salam, ya ludu salam, monin biga tamam, biga murta, motoron anjil, salam ya, iyunume, betalau, kejejen, betalau, abuba salamnya, mata kore salamnya, mama salamnya. Salam take, wane konga salam take, jadala salam take, aku jino bulung salam take, Emmanuel adi salam take, tumgulu salam takun, intumgulu salam takun, epele kulum salam takun, Dol fakir mada salam, ya ludu salam, monin biga tamam, biga murta, motoron anjil, salam ya, iyunume, betalau, kejejen, betalau, abuba salamnya, mata kore salamnya, mama salamnya. Salam take, kal menyang salam take, kal menyang salam take, ay jang mamur salam take, ay jang mamur salam take, dol fakir mada salam, ya lude salam, monin biga tamam, biga murta, motoron anjil, salam ya, iyunume, betalau, kejejen, betalau, abuba salamnya, mata kore salamnya, mama salamnya.
Ay salam ja de ya mishla kalam tat salam ya nas de gadin fogu. They went for 45 minutes break, lunch, and they will be back shortly. Please tune with us. We will be back for you with what is going on in this conference, the fifth governors and 3 administrators forum in Juba. Thank you so much for watching. I will leave you here, and my colleagues will pick up with you later on after 45 minutes. Thank you. Have a good day, good night, good afternoon. Abram, are you there? Abram, do you hear me? All right, then we will come. Yeah, sorry, yeah, here is.
Isaac, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Abram. Yes, yeah. Will we be waiting here live or we close back again?
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of late. 45 minutes. I don't know if there are some people who want to come and analyze this. So while we're waiting for them, but I don't know. But you can close and then we can come back later when they resume.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of, because 45 minutes is almost 1 hour, 15 minutes of to 1 hour. So that thing, we will close down, we'll come back again when they started to resume the conference. So stay tuned and follow us. We will be back within 45 minutes again. Thank you so much for being with us, and stay tuned, please. God bless you all. Have a good day, good afternoon, good morning. Grab your cup of tea or breakfast if it is morning for you, and we'll catch up again. Thank you. Isaac with you and Abraham Madi. Thank you.
It's your boy Young giving that thing. Control like a stand and punch America. Banyi doll, ban control like a stand and punch America. Banyi doll, ban walk on the lake and carry water no watching. Oga level like gear, pow, very lake. Panda with ya, punch America. Banyi doll, ban watching the tongue of Pandon could you ever buy a check out? Papu Panda Juru, what ya be? Stand up and cheer America, if I need it all, pan, 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 pan,